Hi, this is Reg Athwal, and welcome to another episode on family business legacies on our channel. It's absolute delight and honor to be interviewing Craig Goldblatt today, who's not only part of a fantastic story of a family business legacy on Bloodline, but in his own right, as you can see here from the screen, he's also a transformational speaker in his own right. He's an impact coach. He's done a lot of work with charities and social entrepreneurship industry areas. And he's got some great keynote speeches. And if you look at some of the titles there, Magnify Your Impact is a key part of his DNA and what he gives to audiences. Unleash your best, make your mark, impact the world. He is a world expert on purpose, legacy, and personal mastery, and has made an impact to hundreds of thousands of people already, not only in the UK, but globally. So Craig, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for being with us today from sunny UK.
Thank you, Ray.
In partial lockdown. So I'm going to get straight into it, Craig. I want to talk about the history of your family legacy that's been around for many years. When did it start?
So, well, maybe thank you first of all, Reg. First of all, it's great to be here, and I guess if I go back to my birth, which I was born 1973, so that makes me 47 years of age. I was born in South Africa, in Johannesburg. My dad was from Bloemfontein. My mum was from Johannesburg, and we emigrated to the UK in 1977. And then I studied in Surrey. I did some business diplomas, and I went on the road for the first 10 years of my career. In my 20s, I was a foot soldier in sales teams and learned my trade in the corporate world. And then I was fortunate enough to be London sales manager of a couple of large corporate organizations. And then I grew a sales force for a medical insurance firm. And when I was 29 years of age, I realized that my only major gift from a business perspective was in communication. And over the last 17 years, I've been really privileged to speak on the European conference circuit predominantly on our emotional legacy, on our intention and our purpose, and how do we create our own sense of change through our beliefs and values and our own identity and skills. So that's my career and my life in a nutshell.
Well, what we'll do for people watching is, obviously there's a lot there in a couple of minutes.
Yes.
And we'll make sure in the description below that you've got Craig Goldblatt's website and other information, so you could find out more about those things. So how does all that link, and what's the path for you, or from grandfather, father to
Yes.
you, in what you do, and how's that been inspired from your family business?
So let me share a story with you, Reg, because to me it's a foundation. There are three major people from a career perspective that have guided me enormously in my life, and my mother, father, and another gentleman. So my parents and another gentleman. And so if I share the three of their stories, if I start with a story about, there was a boy born in 1905, which would make him 115 years today. Wow. From his birth. And he was born in Eastern Europe. And by 1921, this boy, who was born in 1905, would have been 16 years old. He was in the middle of the Russian Revolution. The revolution was 4 years old at that point. He was a street kid, really. He had no education, could not read or write. And you can imagine at an Eastern European port in Riga, standing there with nobody around him that he knew, couldn't read or write, had no money, just the clothes on his back. And in 1921, his name was Oscar. And in 1921, Oscar wanted a better life, a different life, and got on a refugee boat and went to England, arrived in England late 1921, and went to the immigration offices in London, walked from Southampton to London, and asked for a ticket to get into America, which he found through one of his brothers who got earlier left Riga and went to New York on a boat. So he asked for an immigration ticket and was told that he had to go back on the street. And at that point, Oscar, you can imagine, been scrubbing decks for a couple of weeks now, and through his whole childhood, he had an enormously rough time. And he was told he couldn't go to America. So he didn't give up. He went on back to Southampton, got on another boat, and arrived early 1922 into Cape Town, where he asked for some work. And he asked many restaurants and shops, could he do something to help? Could he earn some money? And he got no after no after no, a lot of negativity. And then he was told by one restaurant to try Johannesburg. So he walked, which is over 1,000 kilometers, to Johannesburg from Cape Town with 2 other Latvian boys. And you can just imagine the despair, really, over that period of time, and how tough it was with not much food, no money, and having to walk over 1,000 kilometers to find a job. And eventually he found a job in Johannesburg in an area in the Crown Mines, and he earned the equivalent of a few pounds in those days per month. And Oscar was given a grain shack, with just some blankets to keep warm at night, and just slept on a block of wood for years and collected enough money. And then he was in his mid-20s, still couldn't read or write, had no education. And he had an idea in his mid-20s that he could collect these cardboard boxes, clean the cardboard boxes up, and sell them to the back of shops, because he saw that all the suits and the clothes from the shops went into boxes. So he decided to find these boxes behind the cinema in Hillbrow, in an area of Johannesburg. And he sold these boxes to the back of shops. And he realized that when he talked to the shopkeepers, everybody loved him. They loved his energy and his passion and his drive, and just he had a glint in his eye. And he realized that's all that he had. He had a little bit of money that he'd raised over the last number of years. But he had
Craig, how old was he at that time?
So he was in his mid-20s.
Mid-20s, okay. And this is around early 1930.
1930
now, okay.
So he was born in so he's born in 1905. So this would be around about 1930 in Johannesburg. And he started selling these boxes, and then he became very successful, and he kept finding boxes, doing them up, cleaning them up, and selling them to the shops. And then he made enough money to buy a little bicycle, and he got his first employee, was a chap called Abraham Matudu, which was this kid, this tribal guy in South Africa. And he trusted Abraham. They became friends. And Abraham used to deliver the boxes, and Oscar was in charge of sales, and Abraham was in charge of operations. So Oscar used to sell the boxes and make them, and Abraham used to deliver them around Johannesburg. And sometimes on his bicycle, he had a little front to the bicycle, which was like a wooden platform he built. And he used to pile the boxes so high in front of his bicycle and deliver them to shops. And even if it rained, the boxes got wet, but he kept delivering them. And then Oscar got enough money to buy a wire stitching machine, started making more and more boxes. Then he got 2 employees, 5 employees, 10 employees. And by the time Oscar was in his mid-30s, 5 years later, he registered this business as Transvaal Box. And Oscar then rented some premises in Nugget Street in Johannesburg. And then he had 10 employees, 15, 20, 30, 50 employees. And Oscar then had a box distribution business, and he was making thousands of these boxes and selling them, and his clients got bigger and bigger. But even into now, Oscar was about 30 years of age. He still couldn't read, still couldn't write, had no formal education. But he trusted a couple of people within his business to look after the figures, look after the finances, look after the customer service and the operations. And Oscar's business was truly born. And then in his mid-30s, Oscar got very big in Johannesburg, and he started buying big rolls of paper from New York, from one of the biggest distribution paper businesses in America called St. Regis. And Oscar got friendly with the owners of St. Regis, who are huge operators in America, and they backed Oscar to take over Oscar's nearest competitor, which was called Amalgamated Box in South Africa. And
can I ask you, Craig, just to interrupt you there, before you carry on with the rest of this beautiful story, is because I'm seeing a pattern, okay?
Yes.
What would you say were Oscar's qualities, your grandfather's qualities, that was creating these openings and how this entrepreneur was expanding? What were the qualities? What did he have?
I think we learn from pain. Unfortunately or fortunately, we learn from suffering, and when we have difficult times, I think that teaches us a lot. And so I think the first thing Oscar had was he had the school of life. And he learned, obviously, as a child to never give up. And so that's number one. Oscar never gave up. The second is, the biggest skill that we can have is a skill in communication. So he never gave up. He had a great glint in his eye, and he loved people. So he never gave up, number one. Number two is he communicated really well with people. And the third is he had a deep love for people. He had 1,000, when he got married in the end, he was very proud to say he had 1,000 people come to his wedding, which in South Africa was a big wedding. Maybe not in India.
Yeah, that's a bit like an Indian wedding.
Yeah, I was going to say, not very big in India, but it was big in South Africa. But Oscar had, so to answer your question, a deep love of people, great communicator, and really never gave up. And so he then built the business. I'm sorry I'm going so fast, but when I tell this story, I get excited about it. So he merged Amalgamated Box and Transvaal Box together, forming a company called National Amalgamated Packaging, which was given the name Nampak.
Yes.
And so Oscar was chairman of Nampak and built this business. And into his 40s and 50s, he then obviously had several thousands of people in his team.
Yes.
And he had a big organization in South Africa, and he became one of the biggest box distribution businesses in the whole of the country. And there's so much that's amazing about this youngster from Eastern Europe. But the thing for me that's so amazing about Oscar was his, as I said before, was his love for people and his ability to understand that even though he didn't have any sense of finance or modern technology in any way, shape or form, or machinery or anything, he just got by on the fact that he loved people. And he couldn't, until the day that he died, this man could not read or write. He just trusted, and he trusted the people around him to guide him, and he guided them. And he just created, like you have, helped the world so much with this, Reg. He just grew a business where he could trust and love the people around him and had a deep sense of purpose for what he wanted to create.
And how do you think Craig, and God rest his soul, and your grandfather, how did he influence you? And did you get a chance to spend quality time with him at all?
When I was about 10 years old when Oscar died, but and you've told me so much about this in my life, Reg, is that I believe a huge, and actually Eckhart Tolle said it very well as well, when he said that I think what we concentrate on in our lives most of all is our conscious mind sees a ripple on top of the ocean. And most of us just spend our whole lives concentrating on the ripple on top of an ocean, when really we are the ocean. So we concentrate on such a small part of who we are. There's an entire ocean in our body, and I love that metaphor. It's quite poetic, but I love it. Is that Oscar, throughout my ancestry, makes me and makes other people. So all of us have this ingredient that, thank goodness, we can't work out. There's a part of us, that our energy that you've described as we're connected to the entire universe, is that I think what Oscar's given me is so deep that I don't know what it is. But if I was to that's the ocean. But if I was to try and describe it, is he's given me energy. He's given me personality. He's given me my character. And so, along with my parents massively and everybody else in the family, is the one thing that a lot of people say that Oscar's given me is passion and energy for life. And from a graphic representation or environmental perspective, if I can be an eighth of the success that Oscar was, I'm doing bloody well. So,
Craig, can I ask you, with family businesses, there's different models out there and evolution of what happens with family businesses. So in some cases, like your grandfather, serial entrepreneur, merges with someone, becomes the head of a sizable business that grows not just locally, but I think it's
$1 billion.
Most people globally would know this brand as well.
Yes.
In the industry. And then a bit like Cadbury's, the Cadbury story, where eventually 6 or 7 generations later, the original family have only got a small stake in it, and the entire business has become a professional corporation. In some cases, families exit from a wealth point of view, and then some people spend it all. Some of it end up with that money or put it in a trust, and then a future generation come along and use that money wisely to rebuild. So the family business legacy and the family legacy continues, but maybe not with the old business or the manufacturing company or whatever it was. So how's it gone for the Goldblatts? How's it gone from your father's generation now to where you're at?
Yes. So if I answer that in this way, that Nampak has gone on. I mean, Oscar started Nampak and grew it in South Africa from a national perspective. And then you're absolutely right. Then, like, you know, Oscar realized at a point, probably when he was in his 60s, I guess, that, you know, as he's getting older, that he brought in a big professional board and they took it to a different level again. And now today it's in a big American company, and I believe, and, you know, so he grew it to that point. As far as my family is concerned, you know, I think it's okay for me to say that that my father and my mother, who are the two people that have grown, I feel, given me the platform, everything that I enjoy today is through my parents, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, and financially, comes from my parents, and obviously my grandparents, as I've spoke about one of my grandparents today. But I think how it's evolved for me is, you know, Oscar was a part of that and journey, and my dad in his own right was a Cecil Rhodes Scholar in law, and came to Oxford University when he's 18, and then went back and started lecturing law in South Africa. And my mum was very involved in international development. She was a social worker, and as people came out of prison, mum used to help them, and mum became a Buddhist spiritually, and all of this added. My dad's sense of balance and his business mind and the way in which he started through an educational perspective has been profound for me. Dad's values and his strength of character and mum's spiritual strength have helped me to hopefully do a little bit of good in the world. And I'm not sure if all of that just gives a background to it. But to answer your question, Reg, you know, after Oscar died, we all created our own way of living and our own businesses and our own life. But Oscar, to me, was the inspiration early in my career to say that anything's possible, and I can do anything, providing I believe in it enough.
I mean, you obviously, you know, there's certain things we can't talk about on an interview like this, and you've answered the question as best as you can. I think maybe where I'm coming from is,
I didn't answer it very well.
Having known you for those watching us, I've known Craig for 17 years. So, you know, there are the people I meet around the world who I've known for a long time, clients as well as dear friends. When it comes to a family business and a wealth perspective, there's people who are out there who hustle and grind and work hard, and, you know, and Craig, I think if it's okay to say this, you're someone who has worked extremely hard, but your shift, you know, with influence from your grandfather, your father, your mother, and so on, is you get to this very rich place where most people don't get to until they're in their, I've seen in their 60s, 70s, or 80s, where when wealth is created, they then feel this need to give back. And you're one of the few people that I know coming from this family business legacy where you were driven from a very early age with that, with what I just shared. Could you expand on that of what was happening for you in your 20s and your early 30s, which most people, you know, wouldn't be thinking that way?
Thank you for that, Reg. So my parents, my mum passed away when I was 18, and my parents, I feel, were rare, not to compare them to anybody else in the world, but for me, the rarity for me and the special ingredient that my parents have is that they had amazing academic and analytical minds, and they're deeply spiritual people. And my mum was a Nichiren Shoshu Buddhist, and when mum was dying, mum passed away when she was 46, and when she was told that she had cancer early in her 40s, mum used to chant 4 or 5 hours a day. So to put context to that, she'd wake up 5, 6 in the morning and chant for 3 hours. And then in the evening, she'd chant again. And she used to say that time, if you break up the day of 24 hours, those 5 hours gave her 19 hours while she was asleep and awake, so much more clarity and energy than she would have had if she didn't chant at all. So the power of that clarity that she had in her purpose for while she was alive as a Buddhist gave me such inspiration. And that's where it came from for me, Reg, is Dad's values and his beliefs in, family values and the way in which he lives his life, and Mum's spiritual strength at 18. Mum was a social worker the whole of her life, and she worked for the Red Cross. And so that's where it came. By the time I was 18, I think I already understood the wealth of being a spiritual person.
That's great. And could you share, since that realization, some of the things that you've done, which has got you to where you are now, and maybe you can share in a few minutes, what is Craig Goldblatt's purpose today for the future, and how are you linking in these charitable paths that you've created over the years, linked with purpose and what you do for a living for non-profit organizations, social entrepreneurship areas. Could you share from the breakthrough moment and the journey up to now, and then what the future looks like for you?
So I think when Mum died, obviously, when you're an 18-year-old boy and your mother passes away, something happens that I can't explain. I don't know what happened. But physically, what played out after that is I blocked out Mum's death in my 20s. I wasn't willing to deal with it. And then I started speaking at 29, and I knew that I'd been inspired by both Dad and Mum to speak and communicate. And then I think, to answer your question as best I can, Reg, that journey started when I was 35. So my real understanding of this work started when I was 35. I went to the Amazon forest and I spent some time with an Athwal community, a remote Athwal community in the Ecuadorian part of the forest that was so profound for me. I slept on a block of wood, spent some time with a dream nation, an Athwal community that lived purely spiritually in the forest and never seen a motor car, the whole community. They never left the forest, most of them. And this taught me about nature, and it taught me about purpose, and it taught me about living with your heart first, not just your head. And then I was lucky enough to go to India 3 times and have a similar experience. And then I was lucky enough to go to West Africa and meet the Moshi tribe, a very remote community in West Africa. And in my 35, I suddenly realized that was the huge move for me, the huge moment in my life when I was 35, that I realized that I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. And what I need to do is to listen to my heart and my gut first, not just my head. And that change has to be one of contribution rather than growing financially all the time or trying to grow financially.
So can I ask you then, what does money mean to you? What does wealth mean to you?
It's big. I mean, money's an energy, I think, that is a transfer of gifts. I mean, money's an energy that comes in and out of our lives. And I think it's an abundant energy. I think money is one of many energies in the world. It's just a gift. Money is an opportunity for me to make a difference, to help people. It's a currency, but it's an energetic currency. It's not something, and we proved that now, right? It's not something that holds in my hand money and says, I've earned this. It's about an energy that I can give something to somebody, or they can give it to me to say this is of value. And it's one of many energies, and it's a demonstration of all of our values. So it's just one of many energies.
So this is good. So other areas that you focus on now, maybe you could give us your interpretation of what you talk a lot about. Making an impact. What does that mean? You talk about purpose. What does that mean? You also talk about legacy. All of these things for our viewers. What does that mean? And could you leave them with a few tips, maybe 1 or 2 tips of what they should consider doing in these areas?
Yes. So if I talk about levels of change, and we've, me and you have studied so much in our life so far and continue to do so. And there's been some great people, Jack Canfield, Anthony Robbins, all these different people that have taught me about starting at the center and working outwards. And so at the center of me, and what's most important for people looking to make a difference and an impact in the world, we have to start from a place of legacy, which is what you've done so much of in your life, I believe. How you taught me this is that it's emotional legacy, it's intention. We have to start with what I call intent. And our intention is an emotional thing. So I love to do this. So if somebody wants to create a difference in the world, here's where I feel we should start. We start with the end in mind. So I love this question that I ask audiences, Reg, which is when we reach the end of our life and we look back, when we sit on our rocking chair and we look back at life, what will have been our emotional legacy, not just our physical or financial one? So in other words, my legacy, my intention for the world is to give and receive love. If I've helped 1 million people on this planet to love themselves more and love others more, I've achieved, I've succeeded. So that's what we have to do first. Number one is
why 1 million and not 1,000,001? 1.23 million.
Yeah, I have no idea. It's a strange thing that I guess I look at it like this. When I work it back, right, is, if I don't know how many people I've been privileged enough to stand in front of, and you'll never know. If I look at your career, you've impacted millions and millions and millions of people, Reg. And if I look at my speaking, say I've stood in front of 250,000 people, and I'm 47. So if I can directly impact 1 million people, the ripples of that and the impact that those people make, I don't know. But if I can, in a tiny way, just being little Craig on this planet, if I can...
it reminds me, Craig, and you know my wife extremely well, where, I remember years ago, she said to me, it doesn't matter whether it's 100 family businesses or 1,000 or through education, it's 1 million. The most important thing is one family at a time.
Right.
What impact has been made to them.
Right.
So it could be 500 people in the audience, but it's that one person,
right,
that we really made a difference to.
Right.
Who will ring you up in 30 years' time or sends you an email and says, Craig, I was there in London at such and such conference. You won't know who I am, but this is what's happened to me since. And by the way, I'm now running a company with 10,000 employees.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. So it's that piece. So to start with our intention, our emotional legacy. And then the second thing, so that's number one, is we've got to start with intention. Second is purpose, is what's our reason for living? In other words, I think intention's at the top, our emotional legacy, and then purpose is how we meet that intention, is what's our reason for doing that work? What's my reason for helping people to love themselves? Because it stimulates our life. It helps people live a rich life. So purpose is to be able to, my purpose is to contribute. So my intention is love. My purpose is to contribute. They're different things. At the top of the tree, there's intention, which is love. The emotional driver that drives everything I do. Underneath that, my purpose is to contribute. Underneath that, we have, it's logical levels of change, right? Underneath that, it's about the third thing is what's unique about me and what are my skills? What's my talent that I can give to people? And as the foundation of this work, Reg, the final thing that I focus on with people is what are the core values that underpin everything that I do that I don't violate? In other
Can
words,
I ask you, with those values, are they Craig Goldblatt values, or is there guiding principles and values that you've had from your grandfather Oscar, which has gone down generations?
I wish they were my values. I'd be sitting on a beach earning 20%. I wish they were. Yeah, I've inherited the values from, like you've said, you know, from ancestry, and yeah, my values, all of our values, I think, are shared. We all have the same values, I think, in the world, which is we have hundreds of them in our heart. Mm. And what the ones that are important to us at any given time in our lives, the structure depends on the experiences we've had through our behaviors and our ecology.
And what are your core values, or we refer to them with our clients as well as guiding principles?
Yeah, guiding principles.
What would be your top 2 or 3 values or guiding principles that you know are already being expressed and cascading down to your next generation?
So it's interesting. I know my wife tells me I've closed my eyes so much when I talk about these kind of things, but love, compassion, learning, a thirst for learning, and a sense of contribution. Mm-hmm. It feels to me, and you know what, actually, Reg, you know, I've given you 4 there, and a 5th one is enjoyment of fun, expression. Now I'm going on a rant here, energy. You know, those values are so important to me. And as I sit here today, if I was to take those 5 or 6 and give 2 most important ones right now with the coronavirus and everything that I'm learning right now, it's got to be around love and nature and compassion. Those are the ones that right now I think we've lived quite a male energy for the last number of decades, and male energy is wonderful because it gives us drive and determination. But I think we need right now more of the female side of us. The female energy needs to rule the world for a while. Yeah. You know, so that feels most important to me, that we turn around and say, okay, you know, has this, yes, in lots of ways, our drive and determination and our persistence have helped us for so long. Yeah. But it's also created some damage. And I think we need to rebalance this. I get it. That's deep. Maybe we'll have another episode on that and talk about the female being unleashed, you know, in the world. And I think that could be a good topic. So for those of you watching, and don't forget to, you know, if you're enjoying the content, don't forget to subscribe on the channel. Maybe leave some of your comments, share the video if you found it interesting. And in the description, you'll get details on how to connect with Craig. Craig delivers a lot of keynote speeches for organizations. He's got different programs on his website. Craig, what are some of the other things that you get involved in that I could be missing if someone wants to reach out to you? So thank you, Reg. My focus is twofold right now. Is I'm working with philanthropic endeavor. So there's 2 real groups of people that I work with. One group is successful entrepreneurs that are looking to make impact through their resources financially and through time. So I want to talk to entrepreneurs and philanthropists. And the second group that I want to work with, because I think these are the people that are operationally doing some great work and very much in my heart, are leaders of non-for-profit organizations that have conferences and seminars where I can help them to make a big impact to their teams. So that's charities, social entrepreneurship, and community interest companies. So it's entrepreneurs and charity heads. Wonderful, love it. So I've got one last question and we'll wrap up, okay? Let's pretend for a second, because you know I don't know and you can't disclose it anyway. Let's pretend from your grandfather Oscar, going down to your father's generation, down to you, you've got this trust set up, and in the trust is $1 billion, okay? And your future generation, your children, and by the way, for those who don't know, your son's name is? Oscar. Aha, all right. This is how legacies carry on, okay?
and I'm sure he must have asked you, why did you name the
Yes.
Oscar? And
Yes.
that's another great story there. So let's say from a wealth point of view, money is not the issue. There's a trust there, X amount is in there. And now you think about your future generation. What do you do? What's the path? How do you groom them? How do you nurture them? How do you decide on what, when it comes to the legacy from the past, where to take that, to the next stage? How do what's your philosophy around the future? And I'm sitting with you in 15 years time, 20 years time, and you're the one on the rocking chair looking back and saying, okay, Reg, with Oscar, first Oscar down to the second Oscar, and now, your children are married and have got kids. What's happened with the legacy?
Yeah. So as you described that to me, my answer has to be in this way. And this, to me, I'm learning now in my life that this is everything for me. It's not a piece, it's everything. That money has to be low down and creation needs to be at the top. So, I used to think like, money was a big piece.
Yeah.
And what it is when we don't have enough. So I'm not saying that money's not important. I'm just saying, I suppose once, if we're fortunate enough to have a little bit of money to be able to eat and look after ourselves and travel a little bit to conferences, if we have a little bit of money, then money needs to go much lower down. And I think as a legacy to Oscar, my son, is for him to make himself hopefully stable where he has health, opportunities and different things. So he has enough money, and Peggy, my daughter, they have enough money where they've created themselves, because that gives them the stimulation and the drive and the determination. And then creation, they need to create what they feel is their life. I mustn't be involved in this. I've hopefully given them an education and my love, and will continue to do that till the day I die.
Right.
But it's for them to then turn around and say what feels right in their heart for them to create. And I think for them to support and contribute, that's what I'd love to have given them, and I hope that I have. And that's my answer, really. It's creation.
And how important, I think that's beautiful message there for everyone. And do you feel at some stage, I know you've done it with charities already, with Giving Africa and other things you've been involved in, but do you see, like people like Bill and Melinda Gates, what they've done, do you see yourself building a Goldblatt Foundation?
If I can learn to make that kind of money, I think, I'm a speaker, and so I'm really fortunate. I have a good lifestyle business, and I think for me is, once we get to a certain level of financial wealth, Bill Gates is a great example, and you've seen so much of this, that people get to a certain period and they understand that they only need so much, and therefore it's a way to contribute, it's a gift. And so what I'd say to my kids, and if I may, I hope this doesn't sound arrogant, is to anybody is, I suppose, once we get to a certain level of financial wealth, then it's an opportunity and platform for us to create more sustainability and equality in the world.
Yeah.
So that's my wish, is if I can make a little bit more money, then one day I can set something up where I can give, from a philanthropic perspective, I can give a bit more out to the world. And I do that with the means that I have right now. But yeah, I'm focused on building more philanthropy into my life.
I think
less
it's
for
beautiful.
me, more for others.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful, Craig, because I don't know anybody else right now in the world that is a professional expert speaker, author, someone who's on the platform, who's been through the journey that you have with a family business, and got to a stage where it's just driven all day, every day by purpose. And you've been like that for all the 17 years that I've known you.
Bless you.
And today, you speak to non-profit organizations, charitable organizations, you talk about social entrepreneurship, and I don't know anyone else in the world who is in that niche. And most people would go, well, non-profits will never pay me, and you're not driven by that. And I think it's really powerful. So for those of you watching, especially any of our clients or people who don't even know Reg at this stage and you're watching this, is if you are building a foundation of any type, if you've got wealth already created and you think about the next generation of their values and how they can still make an impact, and it's not about the money, then reach out to Craig and make sure he speaks at your next family forum or family retreat, because we need to hear his message. So on that note, Craig, I want to thank you very much for your time, and look forward to seeing you after lockdown when we can jump on a plane again.
Absolutely.
Grab a cup of coffee or lunch or dinner with you in the UK. And for now, stay blessed, stay safe, in regards to the family, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Reg. Thank you.